plans to restrict negative gearing to new homes and also halve the capital gains tax discount is one of the biggest policy differences between the two sides in this election. Labor says it will raise $32 billion, these changes, over a decade to raise much-needed funds for schools, hospitals and other promises it's making, while also making housing more affordable for those locked out of the market at the moment. The government, though, says Labor's plan will wreck the housing market, driving down home values and driving up rents. Today, the government seized on some independent economic modelling that's been carried out by Adept Economics, which shows Labor's plans would slash property prices by up to 4% and lower investment returns by 10%. Here was the Treasurer, Scott Morrison.
Now, Adept Economics here in Queensland have released research here today in the media which highlights the impact of Labor's housing tax on the property market. Now, they have released that of their own accord, and they've done that in the complete vacuum of the Labor Party refusing to set out what they believe the impact of their negative policies on housing will mean for the Australian economy and the property market. And they say this: the value of homes will go down by 4% on average.
Down by 4% on average. With me now, Jean Tunney, the principal at Adept Economics, who's done this modelling. Thanks very much for your time. Can you clear this up to start with? Does your modelling show, as the Treasurer we heard there stating, that Labor's policy will drive down home values by 4% on average?
Well, look, that's what I found. I mean, it could be a reduction of up to that amount. I mean, that will occur over a few years, I think. So, yes, if you look at the reduction in returns to investors that are implied by the Labor policy, then that will reduce...
Well, I'll get to that in a moment. OK, but just on home values, so it'll actually drive down, but is it up to 4% or an average 4% reduction in home values?
Oh, sorry, well, it would be around, up to that across the market, but it'll be different in different segments of the market. So, look, that's the maximum rational fall I think could occur, but that will
right. So
that
not
be
the average. That's the maximum. The maximum in the most hardly hit markets in the country.
No, and the most hard, it could be more in some markets, particularly in inner city markets where you have more investors. So the more investors in the market, given the drop in returns to the investors, the greater it could be. So it could be over 5%, it could be 5 to 10% for inner city apartments that are popular with investors. I mean, Grattan Institute said something similar. My results are, on average, they're higher, so they had about 2% compared with, I think it's more like 4% based on the numbers I've run.
Well, the interesting thing there, though, Grattan actually said a 2% less increase, not an actual fall in house prices at all. Are you saying a fall in house prices, or are you just saying a slower rate of increase in house prices?
Well, look, it'll be relative to where it would have been. So, I mean, the market adjustment will be complex. Well, it will be relative to what it would have been. So, I'm not saying that they're going to drop overnight. But
are you saying house prices will drop, or they will actually go up more slowly?
They will. The way I see it playing out is I think they will go up more slowly, yes, that's right. So that will probably occur over a few years. And, I mean, that's going to be a complex outcome in the market that's very difficult to forecast.
Sure, but this is a pretty important point because the government, we heard the Treasurer is using your report to say Labor's policy will drive down house prices by 4% on average. That's not what your report shows.
Well, what it is showing is that if you're in the if you've got your property, if you're selling your property post 1 July next year, then because of the lower returns to investors, then there's less willingness of the investors to pay. So they're part of the market that might be buying your property. So that will impact on the price that you will receive. So look, it's relative to where they would have been. This will be an outcome that occurs over time, so it won't happen overnight. Look, David, I get your point.
No, I get your point, though. It's going to be less than what you would have got otherwise, but not actually less than
Look, I don't
what
want to
the
get
value
into
is
the
today.
political game here.
No, I appreciate that. You've been focusing on negative gearing, though, for a while. You have argued previously, I think it was in February, that the government's right to look at reforming negative gearing. The current rules appear to distort the market, encourage excessive borrowing for investment properties. Is that still your view, that there's a problem with the system at the moment?
Well, I think I have to look back at those comments. I think what I was talking about was the interaction with the capital gains tax, David. And I have acknowledged in the report that I prepared that there could be an issue with the concessional treatment of capital gains at the moment, right? So I think it's right to look at that. So currently there's a 50% discount, which may be too high in a low inflationary environment. So I think it's right to actually look at that. I'm not naive enough to say I don't think that I think the tax policy settings at the moment are perfect. My old boss Ken Henry did a report into this 6 or however many years ago, and made some interesting recommendations that should be reconsidered. So look.
But your view on the capital gains tax is that it's the 50% capital gains tax discount is too generous right now?
Oh, arguably, yes, I think so. But I wouldn't be cutting the discount to 25%. I think that is going to, lead to a large cut in investor returns. So if you do the numbers, what you see is that the larger part of the reduction in returns to investors comes from that cut in the capital gains tax discount. So this is a big tax grab, really. I mean, it's...
and what do you find... this is interesting. The return for investors, say Labor's policy is implemented as it's announced, what would be the return to investors if because they're still able to purchase a new home and negatively gear that, less capital gains tax discount. Does your modelling show they'd still actually get a decent return?
Oh, well, it'll still give a decent return, that's right, but less of a return than previously.
About 12%, I think, is what you're saying,
well,
is that right?
That's at a very high rate of gearing. So, look, what's not accounted for here is the risks involved in all of this. And, I mean, so if you want to get that rate of return with a high rate of gearing, so lots of debt, then you need to accept the risk with that, because that can magnify your gains, but it can also magnify your losses.
Final one just on rent, because the government's also been saying Labor's policy would drive rents up. What's your modelling find on this?
Well, I've accepted that I don't think that'll happen in the short term, but I haven't modelled the long-term situation, David. What I've done is a very straightforward analysis. I've just looked at the returns to investors and what that may imply for what they'd pay for properties, and then talked about how that might impact the market, right? So in terms of rent,
but I'm just
depends
reading
on
from,
the levels
from your
of investment
report.
in the future. Yeah, look, it may...
Right, but you've said, there's little scope for landlords to seek higher rents from tenants to make up for a reduction in tax concessions due to competition for tenants. So you don't seem to be flagging any increase in rent.
No, but what I haven't looked at is the longer term factors. So if this impacts on levels of investment in property, which is the possibility, there are risks, it brings risks. If it impacts on investment in the future, then there might be fewer properties in the future, and then that could impact rents sometime in the future. But in the short term it won't, and certainly if you look at the situation with apartments, there are plenty being built at the moment, so that's actually having a we've seen rental yields
keeping downward pressure
fall.
on the rents.
Yeah, I mean, I've said that in the report.
Yeah. All right, Gene Tunney from Adept Economics, thanks very much for joining us, talking us through your findings this afternoon. Appreciate it. Now, earlier in the campaign